Motion, Paul Masterton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to enable the establishment of collective defined contribution schemes and for connected purposes. Having worked as a solicitor specialising in pensions law, and yes, that was as exciting as it sounds, for the best part of a decade before being elected to represent East Renfrewshire, and as a member of the APPG on pensions, I believe that the pension system is one of this country's great achievements. Throughout the decades, both state and workplace pensions have existed to provide for people's retirement and to give them a comfortable and dignified later life. But over that long history, there have also been times of great change. As circumstances change, as we live longer, and as new models and new approaches develop, the way we make that provision for people's retirement has changed. This bill is about the dry business of reform of private pensions and fiscal stability in a globalised, complex business environment, but it is also about the 140,000 men and women working for the Royal Mail across the United Kingdom, including the 143 in East Renfrewshire who serve over 30,000 households from delivery offices in Barrhead, Clarkston and Newton Mearns, and ensuring that they get the best possible outcome in retirement. The Royal Mail currently operates a defined benefit scheme, but as life expectancies have risen and the regulatory burden has increased, the risks and volatility inherent to a defined benefit scheme, which provides a guaranteed level of benefits on retirement, are increasingly unaffordable. At the same time, defined contribution schemes, where the level of retirement provision is linked to the pot saved during the accumulation phase, shifts pretty much the entire burden of risk towards the employee. For some time now, the industry has toyed with a middle way, and that is what this bill is about. Royal Mail and the CWU have agreed in principle to introduce a new kind of pension scheme for the first time in the United Kingdom, a collective defined contribution scheme, or CDC. The fact that this innovative development has come as a result of cooperation between employer and union is testament to the power of constructive industrial relations in benefiting company and workforce. As a Scottish Conservative, I know that constructive action is more effective than needless confrontation, and the work of the Royal Mail and the CWU in developing this CDC proposal bears that out. Indeed, I hope this kind of positive employer behaviour and positive trade unionism can serve as an example to businesses and trade unions up and down the country. I have been greatly impressed by the modern, proactive approach of the CWU to this issue, and their work here does them great credit. CDCs claim the much-needed middle ground between defined benefit schemes and defined contribution schemes, balancing in a slightly more even way the risks, rights and responsibilities between employer and employee. This should mean higher quality pensions that are affordable and sustainable for all involved. While contributions rather than benefits are defined in CDCs, their collective aspect means that risks arising from matters like longevity, investment and inflation are shared collectively rather than borne by each individual member. In an age of increased flexibility and choice, the flip from passive saver to engaged retiree can be difficult and the choice of retirement products confusing. Annuities have traditionally offered poor value, drawdown provides higher returns and is less reliant on market conditions at one snapshot, but the individual bears the ongoing investment risk and could exhaust their retirement pot if they miscalculate their own longevity. If you have a defined contribution scheme, Mr Speaker, you effectively act as your own actuary and your own investment consultant. Or more than likely, you take a variable level of guidance on approaching retirement, having spent your entire working life invested in a default fund. This impacts the level of your retirement saving. Supporters of CDC argue that it can deliver higher returns than traditional money purchase schemes for the same level of contributions, partly because CDC pension pots would not need to take as cautious an investment approach as those in more conventional defined contribution schemes. The need to de-risk in the years leading up to retirement to protect against a sudden drop in pot value is removed in a collective scheme. A report by the Working Pensions Select Committee, which has joined the growing calls from employers, unions and others for action to allow CDCs to be established, has said that this enhanced freedom of investment could also benefit the wider economy, as CDC schemes invest more heavily in more innovative firms. It is clear that CDCs would offer major advantages for employees to defined contribution pensions. Understandably, unions and workers oppose the closure of DB schemes, but the reality is that these were to continue to open, many employers would struggle to continue and many jobs would be put at risk. In my 7 years in practice, I advise a range of employers and trustee boards on the closure of dozens of schemes, and in every case, the company in question made the same justification, that the defined benefit scheme was unaffordable and unsustainable in cost and risk. Many are wholly legacy arrangements, often found in industries least able to sustain them. Likewise, we must not ignore the fact that when a defined benefit scheme becomes more and more of a burden on the employer, it restricts what else that employer can do. It's a drag on investment, and it's a drag on the economy. Deficit repair contributions and high levels of ongoing pensionable salary contributions reduce the ability to invest and the ability to increase pay. We need a solution that works for both employee and employer, and that's what I believe CDCs, like the one proposed by Royal Mail and the CWU, to be. It shares the risks in a way that's fair and responsible. People might therefore wonder why CDCs haven't already taken off, why the Royal Mail haven't already just gone ahead, or indeed why half the major employers in the UK aren't rushing to set CD schemes up. But the reason is that, quite simply, they're not really possible under the current legislative framework. These innovative kinds of schemes cannot operate in the UK without primary legislation because of the way parts of the current framework work, particularly around the statutory funding regime. Attempting to establish a CDC would run into all kinds of practical difficulties. And whilst there have been calls to use the 2015 Pension Schemes Act or the 2011 Pensions Act to introduce CDCs, these are bound up with various other issues. And I firmly believe that the best approach is to bring forward clear primary legislation specifically aimed at the introduction of CDCs of the kind proposed by the Royal Mail and the CWU. CDC pension schemes already operate in countries like the Netherlands, Canada and Denmark, and we can learn from that experience, both good and bad. And I'm pleased that the UK Government has recognised this. The UK Government's pension reforms and automatic enrolment in particular have been hugely successful, and I'm glad that they have recognised that the introduction of these innovative and desirable pension schemes would build on that great success. But they are not a silver bullet. There are questions and considerations in terms of practical operation and in scheme design, but that is not, in my view, a reason to simply sit on our hands when employers and employee representative bodies wish to look seriously at this option for workplace pension saving. So we should not be fooled into thinking they are a magic solution to all problems. They are not, but they are a serious, credible and valid option which this government should legislate to permit. So I very much welcomed the Pension Minister's announcement of a consultation this autumn on the introduction of CDC pensions, although I did kind of expect it to have been brought forward already. And I do hope that the Government can make progress on that consultation as soon as possible. And I hope that by bringing forward this bill today, I can help encourage that process along and give the Pensions Minister a helpful nudge along the way. As a Conservative, I do not believe we should allow the state and regulation to get in the way of employers and employees working together to develop an innovative solution that works to their mutual benefit. We should institute this common-sense, free market reform so that this union-backed solution to a 21st century business problem can progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Order. The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare and bring in the bill?
Mr John Lamont, Ms Christine Hare, Mr Nigel Mills, Mr Richard Graham and Mr Frank Field. And myself, sir.
Thank you. Paul Masterton.
Excellent walking. Collective Defined Contribution Pension Schemes Bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday the 23rd of November.
Friday the 23rd of November. Thank you. Order.